Johnny Tremain, Chapter 7, Section 5. Mrs. Bessie, that monstrous fine woman who looked for the lights, always had an eye out. Thursday afternoons for Johnny, and she usually could manage that Scylla was free then, for she was housekeeper as well as cook. This Thursday, as Johnny drew up, she shook her head. "You come in, Johnny, but I guess today you'll have to put up with just me, your little sweetheart." Johnny's stomach turned over. "Will be needed in the parlor. We've got 9 or 10 of those British officers in there, and Miss Lavinia wants to put on a good show for them." Johnny had often noticed before how disrespectfully Mrs. Bessie spoke of Lavinia, and she was always telling Scylla that she needn't jump so fast when the bell rang for her. "Let her blow her own nose for once," she'd say. Johnny knew that it was no good omen that the old woman had no loyalty toward her mistress, whom she had known since her motherless infancy. In his heart, he knew there was something unlikable about Lavinia Light. Mrs. Bessie knew what it was, and Scylla now knew, but she wouldn't tell him. Now, when he wanted to talk about Miss Light, she would veil her eyes and look at him from out of the corners and say nothing. But he knew Scylla knew. All they in the parlor are fixing up to go to a ball at the Province House. General Gage is giving tonight. Masquerade. Miss Lavinia is going like the Black Queen of Spades, and all her special admirers are going as kings or knaves or jokers out of the pack. Izana's going too. Izana? Yep. Where Miss goes these days, that child goes too. Izzy. No one had ever before called the little girl this. Goes dressed as a two-spot, holding up Miss Lavinia's train. Scylla shot into the kitchen, looking bright and excited. "Johnny, I thought you might be here. They're trying to make a scepter for the Queen of Spades out of tin. I told them you could do it. Miss Lavinia said, show 'em in." The elegant dove-gray, lavender and yellow drawing room was in what Mrs. Lapham would call a state. The officers seemed to have counted on their ladies' help with their costumes, but they had also brought with them a military tailor who was sitting cross-legged on the floor stitching at a black and yellow striped jerkin for a knave. Miss Lavinia looked half in and half out of her costume as Queen of Spades. For a moment Johnny was confused. It was not because she had less clothing on that he was accustomed to, but because she was so beautiful. He had never seen her so happy, so animated before. She was laughing hilariously as she attempted to fasten 2 flat surfaces of cardboard painted with 2 spots onto Izana. But Izana had on nothing but her undershift, her little pink legs bare to the middle thigh. Ma would die if she saw her daughter like this. Johnny did not care about that, but he could not bear to think of poor old Mr. Lapham turning over in his grave. Johnny paid no attention to the hilarious Miss Light. He went up to Izana. "Look here, girl. You go upstairs and you put some clothes on." Izana stared at him, her beautiful, soft brown eyes so blank she looked almost blind. "You know your grandpa's just about flopping over and over in his grave. You weren't brought up to act like this." Izana said, "I'm too young to be lascivious." She was evidently repeating what she had heard some adult say. Johnny slapped her, not for himself, but for her grandpa. She went down in a heap, upended over a pile of finery brought down from the attic. While standing up, it was possible she did not have on quite enough clothes for mixed company, but upended, she did not look to have on any. Then everyone began to laugh. Lavinia was wiping her eyes. Lieutenant Stranger, for it was he who picked the child up, was reduced to painful gasps. "Oh, oh, oh, oh." There was a major in a corner who was vowing he was going to die. Only the military tailor never lifted his eyes, but went on with his stitching. "Oh, Johnny," Miss Lavinia managed at last, for the first time calling him by name, "will you come to the ball and slap all the ladies you think are underdressed? Oh, la! I've burst the stay string. Give me, Scylla, fetch." Scylla evidently knew what would be wanted. She came running with smelling salts, but she got it too close to her mistress's nose. Miss Lavinia was gagging. "Oh, you stupid, stupid girl! You've half killed me. There, take it away. Isana ran up and hid her flushed face in Miss Lavinia's lap. She was half frightened at the attention she had been receiving, and half squirming with delight at being the center of so many eyes. As Miss Lavinia was scolding one sister for a clumsy servant, she was fondling the flying soft yellow hair of the other. Suddenly Johnny saw red. He hated Miss Lavinia and the giggling officers, and Isana. He had already guessed that the two sisters were treated very differently, but he had not before actually seen the situation with his own two eyes. Priscilla had backed out of the picture, standing aside ready to serve if called upon, or ready to be of no more importance than a piece of furniture if not spoken to. Johnny went to her. "Priscilla," he said, "don't you stay here any more. I don't want you to. These people are nothing, just a pack of playing cards. Tear them up and get out. And that goes for the whole collection of them. Miss Lavinia and Izzy, too." Miss Light had regained her composure. "I will not have Isana called Izzy by my servants. I'm not your servant, and if she acts like an Izzy, she gets called Izzy. But as I was saying, Scylla, I will not have my servants intruding their personal affairs into my drawing room. Priscilla, if you are not satisfied here, I can arrange for you to return to your mother, but you are not ever to bring in street boys, horse boys, riffraff. You told me to fetch him in." "I did not tell you to fetch him in." "Yes, you did. I said a clever metal worker, and you came back with this boy, this sauce box, who couldn't do the work anyway because he—" Johnny waited grimly for her to finish her sentence. If she dared say what was in her mind, because he has a crippled hand, he was going over and take her by her long throat and shake her, even if she did look pretty well defended by His Majesty's forces. Her eyes wavered, and she did not finish her sentence. "Now, Scylla, I want you to go to your room and lie down. You're too tired. If you had not been, you would never have been so impudent as to contradict me." "Yes, Miss Light." "And you," she turned to Johnny, "get back to the gutter or wherever boys like you keep themselves." "Yes, Miss Light," he said, mimicking Scylla. Mrs. Bessie said nothing, but she evidently knew what had been going on in the drawing room. "There, Johnny," she said mildly, "you sit. This is not real tea, but I've put just a mite of brandy in it, and it's good and hot." "Miss Lavinia is just about making a monkey out of Isana," he said at last. "Nobody can make a monkey out of anyone who isn't a monkey to start with. Is Scylla happy here?" "Oh, happy enough. What do you expect? She knows she's lost Isana. At first she used to cry, but now she accepts it. It's exciting for her, and there's always a flurry and ongoings. The ball tonight, and next week we move out to Milton for the rest of the summer. We won't stay long." "Why?" "Because the Sons of Liberty there out to get Mr. Light. That's why they haven't yet been rough with the Tories out there. Hope to tempt him to move out, same as usual. They're going to get him and tar and feather him. They're going to ride Miss Lavinia out of town on a rail. They're going to smash his great country house down once he's inside. But the girls, won't they get hurt?" "I'll be there. It's my secret, so I suppose I can tell you. But I'd take it kindly if you'd keep your mouth shut. If there were Daughters of Liberty, I'd be one. You ask Sam Adams about me. I've been helping him secretly for years." Johnny had taken it for granted that an old servant in a Tory house would also be a Tory. They usually were. He looked at Mrs. Bessie with admiration. "The Lights will stay in Milton about a month," she whispered. "The Lights will stay in Milton about a month," she whispered. "You mark my words."